building.
Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about race in America. We have with us Dr. Reavis Mitchell, history professor from Fisk University, also chair of the State Historical Commission, and I want to ask some questions of you in that regard.
Very good.
So there is people are saying that some of these monuments need to be taken down. Some of these that show Confederate generals and the like. If they are going to be taken down, what is the process? How does that work?
All right.
As chair of the Historical Commission?
We have to operate under the Tennessee Preservation Act, an act of the legislature. That act was passed several years ago, and that act discusses protection for monuments and markers on state property. So if there were any questions referred, it would come to the State Historical Commission. Then within the commission, there's a committee on monuments and markers, and they would finally make the recommendation. But the Historical Commission is full of historians. And historians look at these monuments a bit differently. First of all, we're going to ask, why were they constructed? Who was behind the construction? What was symbolic at the time? Now, some of my commissioners are very serious, conservative, and they're into heritage. They're into their Southern heritage, and they celebrate that. They have a constituent basis, and they're going to raise questions. Some of the commissioners are very vehement that the way the markers incite and what they represent today means that some action should be taken. We're going to hear that out, and hopefully we will make a decision. But that's the job of the commission.
Are there any monuments that are up for debate right now?
Well, the Nathan Bedford Forrest Monument in the state capitol is under the preview of the Capitol Commission, which I also sit with by the fact that I'm chairman of the Historical Commission. The Capitol Commission will decide what happens to monuments on state property. There's a lot of discussion about removing the monuments and placing them in the state, in museums, whatever. But there's no discussion about tearing down or destroying monuments, which in some instances are beautiful pieces of art, and they've been a part of the Capitol era and rotunda for years. They represent the fact that Tennessee was active in the Civil War. Tennessee, there were more battles in Tennessee than in most southern states, I think second only to Virginia. A lot of battles, a lot of land, there was a lot of military activity here.
Historically, they do represent that, but to others, they represent something else. There are many other things we could celebrate. So is it appropriate to have these monuments in these important places?
You're applying your values of today to the past, and that's what we must deal with. If the majority of the people, though, and if the acts of the legislature say take those actions, it will happen. I still see that this will probably be an issue in the legislative session this year. The Preservation Act, the Tennessee Preservation Act is on the books, and we're going to carry out to the commission the law as it says in that act. There will be public hearings and discussion before any action is taken. These were lawfully constructed monuments, and if there's any change, it will be under the law also, and that's what the commission is going to ascribe to.
Which is good, because it's an emotional issue.
Yes.
So you're trying, it sounds as though, to take as much emotion out of it as possible, but it's going to be very emotional for some people on both sides.
Yes, 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 yes.
And so do you think it will wind up, because it could be removed with, I believe, a 2/3 vote of your committee.
That's right.
It would be a 2/3, or the legislature.
Exactly.
It could be also, there's the one that's Nathan Bedford Forrest that's inside the Capitol, but there are many others across the whole state.
Yes.
So what do you see happening? We've certainly heard about Nathan Bedford Forrest. Do you think there's going to be a debate about some 200 statues across the state?
Down in Memphis, in a park where there's a Forrest statue, that's in the court right now, and the court decides. The city of Memphis has brought suit to have that monument removed and replaced. So there are going to be multiple solutions. It's not going to be one solution. But I hope in Tennessee the solution is never tearing down monuments, defacing monuments. That's not what it's about. Historians in the state and members of the commission are serious enough. We'll listen to what the people want, and we'll try again to blend the past with the present. But it's awfully hard to take the values of the past when race seemed to be a permissible area to discriminate and make second-class citizens and apply that to the present. Again, the question may come up whether these monuments belong on public property. And if that's the case, if it's decided the monuments, they may be removed, replaced. It may be decided and may be laws from the legislature to say, yes, they're going to remain on public property. And if the legislature takes that action, that's it.
You'll be there. All right, let's go to Christopher. Hello, Christopher.
Yes, can you hear me good?
Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, I have a question for Dr. Reavis. As it relates to race relations in America from an African-American perspective, I want to know, as African-Americans, as far as a model we should be following, who do you think, Dr. Reavis, which leader do you think had a better plan for African-Americans between going Malcolm X's route or Martin Luther King route? I just want to know that.
I think both leaders had the values in what they prescribed. I think King understood that nonviolence is the way that a minority changes a majority, that nonviolent action in a morally sensitive system would work. Malcolm X represented pride. Pride for the African American, pride of the black man. Many people hadn't shown respect. Malcolm, his enduring figure, is that of respect. So they both had a place, and they both, I think, become synonymous in what you see in a Barack Obama. Yeah, and the great thing is that could happen in this country. Very different than some other places in the world, from almost any other place in the world.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question. Thank you for that question, Christopher. Let's go to Carol on line 3. Hello, Carol.
Hey.
Go right ahead.
I want to make a comment about Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Okay.
Yes, he was a Confederate, and he definitely was a member of KKK. But I believe he heard the president's words, and he became Memphis's first advocate for civil rights. And we don't need to be destroying these people. We need to learn from them and learn from our history and understand what happened. But I really believe that he was a changed man when he heard the president's words when he said, "With malice toward none, with charity for all." And that's what our leaders need to be promoting today, love, not hate.
Okay, now I
think that's an excellent point. I mean, one reason you study history is to avoid the mistakes of the past in the present. And so you have to tell the honest story about individuals. Forrest is interesting. He began the KKK, but he began it in an attempt to uplift Southern military men who were upset, who had lost it all. The South, people don't understand what happened in the South after the Civil War. If you are white, your great dream is gone. Slavery's gone, the plantation system is not going to exist. That makes people frustrated. They carry it out. Racism is often just a manifestation of frustration. It's not so much that I'm superior or inferior, it's the fear that you might be inadequate, and that you try to protect through some buoyancy of racism.
And this is a fascinating question / debate. I mean, did Nathan Bedford Forrest have this change of heart? Or
well, but you have to understand that people are going to tell you about his activities at Fort Pillow, where soldiers, African Americans, were slaughtered and not fed. So it's all the duality of personality that makes up a military man, makes up a leader. You know, it's difficult to lead when you don't really know where you want to go.
And so the litmus when it comes to some of these monuments, if there is a litmus, would the litmus be, well, he's a changed man? Or is the litmus simply, this is a period in our history, this is, we don't have to find out if he was a changed man or not. It was, or do we? Kind of
or is this a monument to a military leader who overcame impossible odds to win a defeat in a battle? He's leading the battle. He's not leading the political cause. He's been empowered by the government, which he's a general in the Army, and it's the general's role. Now, if you want to celebrate his military prowess, that's a discussion point. If you want to mistake the bigotry that's now associated with the man, then that's your point. We have to consider them both. And so it's just as unusual and just as difficult as every other decision. It's not black or white.
And do you agree, I mean, President Trump said, well, if we take down this number of statues, then what's next? Is it Washington and Jefferson? You know, what about that
I guess it's different. I'd put it differently. Is it Lee and Grant? Make them both military Civil War figures. The irony is that as sterling a military leader as Lee was presumed by those military historians, Grant had to rise to it. You know, so the whole question: why do you erect monuments and markers? What is the intent? Is it to bring honor to the person, or is it possibly to intimidate? Is it to rally people around who may have negative racial images and bring them together and unify them against other citizens? That should not be the purpose of erecting a monument.
And I won't add, I mean, you don't know, but do you think some across the South have been erected for that reason, for what you said?
If you look at the period when they were erected, they weren't erected immediately after the Civil War. They were erected in the late 19th and early 20th century when racial intolerance was again very high, as high as it was now. They were erected in the 30s and the 40s at the time of the Great Depression, when racial intolerance was very high, because again you had stressed economic times, you had depressed people, and it seems as though that when there's depressed economy, when their jobs are short, racism becomes more provocative. You know, the great irony in Tennessee is that Tennessee has generally been blessed fairly with a pretty good economy throughout its history. So racial intolerance shouldn't have been the hallmark. If you look at a city like Nashville, which has had a diverse economy and jobs, it was a site where African Americans would run away to come to Nashville because of the opportunity.
Mm-hmm. All right, very interesting. We're going to take a break. Brian, Jan, others, hold on the line. If you want to call in, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.